Hi again, 7th graders. One more lesson we're going to go over in this unit because it's a little more difficult, but I think if I talk through it and explain it to you, you get it just fine. So, before going through the rest of this video, you'll need to read chapter 25 of The First Men in the Moon. So if you haven't yet done that, stop this video, go read it, and come back. There are 4 vocabulary words for this section, and sorry about how this formatted on this lesson. It's kind of weird, but anyway, a cordon is a barrier used to prevent access. So like if the police cordon off an area where there was a crime, they usually put up that crime scene tape or whatever. Sometimes in a museum you'll see a rope going in front of a room. They've cordoned off that room so that you can't walk in there. You can just look. Dexterous. Dexterous means that you're skillful in using the hands. So if someone can, say tie knots really well, or knit or crochet, something like that, they're dexterous. Elucidate. If you elucidate something, you make it clear. So if I'm explaining something to you and you ask me to elucidate, you want it made more clear. And scrutinize means to examine something closely. So if, well, again, in the example of a crime being committed, if the police are scrutinizing you, they're examining you closely. So let's go to recap. Meeting with the Grand Lunar. How would you feel if you discovered you were going to meet the president today? Place yourself in Mr. Caver's shoes as he is brought into the court of the Grand Lunar, the supreme ruler of the moon. Mr. Caver is torn between feeling like he is too shabby to represent his planet and being awestruck as he takes in the features of this faceless brain that governs the moon. At first, as I peered into the radiating glow, this quintessential brain looked very much like an opaque, remember opaque means you can't see through it, like an opaque, featureless bladder with dim, undulating ghosts of convolutions writhing visibly within. Then, beneath its enormity and just above the edge of the throne, I'll start again. Then beneath its enormity and just above the edge of the throne one saw, with a start, minute, meaning tiny, elfin eyes peering out of the glow. No face, but eyes, as if they peered through holes. At first I could see no more than these 2 staring little eyes, and then below I distinguished the little dwarfed body and its insect-jointed limbs, shriveled and white. The eyes stared down at me with a strange intensity, and the lower part of the swollen globe was wrinkled. Ineffectual-looking little hand tentacles steadied the shape on the throne. It was great. It was pitiful. One forgot the hall and the crowd. So there they were talking about meeting the Grand Lunar. Kind of interesting and odd. So did you know, in Greek mythology, Selene is the goddess of the moon? This is where H.G. Wells got the idea to name the moon people Selenites. So as a reader, we may see the scene as a climax to Mr. Caver's story. Remember his endless quest for knowledge? Mr. Caver had devoted his entire life to seeking more understanding of the world around him. Throughout the book, he quotes many of the great minds of his time and the research they had done. Now he has a chance to come face to face with the greatest intellect he could ever imagine, that big Grand Lunar brain. Picture the enormous, writhing brain of the Grand Lunar. Visualize his shriveled and useless limbs. What does Mr. Caver realize in that moment? It was great. It was pitiful, he says, as if he comes to a sudden awareness that there is so much more to life than having brain power. While Mr. Caver answers the Grand Lunar's questions about life on Earth, giving details about its weather, creatures, history, and culture, we can imagine the giant brain growing more and more immense, or more huge. Caver then explains that humans have only explored 4,000 miles into the Earth's depths. At this point, the Grand Lunar becomes perplexed, so he's confused. He talked with his attendants, as I suppose, upon the strange superficiality and unreasonableness of man, who lives on the mere surface of the world, a creature of waves and winds and all the chances of space, who cannot even unite to overcome the beasts that prey upon his kind, and yet who dares to invade another planet. Of all the details that Mr. Caver describes about life on Earth, it is this daring of mankind that the Grand Lunar finds most difficult to understand. So let's talk about the theme of discovery, and here's a picture of Buzz Aldrin. And he is saluting the American flag on the moon in 1969, when humans first landed on the moon, almost 70 years after H.G. Wells published his book, The First Men in the Moon. Interesting. So, although a book may have many themes, there is usually one theme that stands out above the others. Themes in a book can be categorized as major and minor themes. A major theme is one that's vitally connected with the conflict and resolution of the story. The truth is, you may already be familiar with selecting books by their theme without realizing it. That is because many times a major theme in the book can be inferred from the title. Think about the title, The First Men in the Moon. If someone were to ask you if this is a book about love, growing up, or discovery, which one will you choose? The title doesn't just say Men in the Moon, it says The First Men in the Moon. So this suggests that the story will be about discovery. And here's a key point. The major theme in a story can sometimes be inferred from the title. Major themes are also usually repeated throughout the story. Here, we differentiate or tell the difference between those themes that appear in one or two chapters and those that become the main focus of a story. Did you notice how many historical names are mentioned in the book? Throughout the book, Bedford mentions Christopher Columbus, Nikola Tesla, and Guglielmo Marconi, among others. What all of these men have in common is that they were all pioneers, men who dared to attempt what no one has successfully done before. Ultimately, their discoveries served to shape the world we live in today. And that is a picture of Tesla and Marconi, who were both pioneers in the field of radio technology. Their inventions captivated the world by making wireless communication possible. How different might modern society be if Tesla and Marconi hadn't worked to discover such technology? So think about it. I mean, we think of radio as an old technology. But before the radio, the wireless communication was not possible. People communicated by telephone, which has wires, telegraph, which has wires, but the radio didn't. Think of all of the wireless technology that has come out of their first invention. Interesting. What is it that drives people to push the limits of what is thought possible in order to discover new horizons? For Bedford, it was the possibility of becoming rich. For Mr. Caver, it was simply the desire to know. But what made it so important to them that they would risk their lives and chance ultimate failure? Perhaps they were willing to risk all simply because there was a challenge. Maybe there is a natural desire in all of mankind to discover and explore the world all around them. So think about that. Sometimes people have more desire than others to discover the world around them, but think about a baby. A baby wants to discover the whole world around them. They learn to move, to crawl, to walk, to do a lot of things in order to discover the world around them. And then a lot of people go on to make major discoveries. So let's review. Discovery is a theme that is woven throughout the story of the first men in the moon. Mr. Bedford and Mr. Caver, the most unlikely of companions, begin a joint quest to journey where no human has ever dared to go before. Together, they discover that a living world exists beneath the surface of the moon. In the process, they also discover things about themselves and the meaning of life. So now you will be able to go on to your questions and refer back to the vocabulary, to all of the reading we just did, to go ahead and complete your questions and let me know if you need anything. Thanks. Bye.